What's up, everybody? FSC Trucking. We just dragged Elaine inside, or rather drove Elaine inside, now that the clutch is fixed and it runs under its own power. As far as that's concerned, driveline is good, with the exception of the engine. Now this engine is a 365 Cummins, and it's got a couple of issues with it. One of the bigger issues is it's got this really bad throttle lag. You hit the throttle, there's a big delay when it ramps up. Come off the throttle and it hangs there a while and then it comes down. We can head to show you. So listen and watch for the delay. As you can see, there's a considerable amount of smoke that still comes out of the engine. Now this engine, again, it's a 365 Cummins. It's a low flow system, so it doesn't have the big radiator hoses, it's got the little ones. It was designed to try to keep the heat in the engine for better emissions. At least that's how I understand it. I'm not an expert on this, Chris knows a lot more than me, but this engine, you see how she's lagging. It is a mechanical engine, it's a mechanical linkage from the throttle to the PT pump. The other thing is, it seems like it's running with a stuck or a missing injector, so she smokes, but it also has the oil pressure controlled step timing. Right now, from after we cut the exhaust off from the clutch transmission job, you'll see we don't have much piping on the turbo. It literally just comes out like an S, and that's it. Now you gotta admit, it sounds badass like that. I can't wait to hear it through a set of stacks, and it will have it. But here's the issue with this engine, and we're trying to figure out what to do with it and how to fix it. So for today, Chris thinks it's air balanced. He's gonna delete a portion of the fuel system to determine if that's actually the case. But once again, I'll show you, it is a mechanical engine. Here's your throttle linkage. It's not an audio delay. It's meaning, like, you know, sometimes you see on YouTube, you see guys hitting with a hammer, and you hear the bang after the hammer hits the nail. I don't know why, but hammers do that. Any banging on it, it always works that way with video. You'll notice that in not just mine, but anybody else that hammers on something. But you see the lag. That lag's real. It's not generated by a camera or an audio lag or a bad mic. That's the lag. So we go ahead and cut her off, and we'll let Chris explain what we're doing and why. Now you can hear that turbo just slowing down.
It acts like it's getting air in the system. It's sucking air, or there's air getting introduced somehow. So we're going to narrow it down. I've got jumper hoses here, put fuel in a bucket, hook the hoses to the motor, eliminate the tanks and all those fuel lines. Run it that way and see what happens. When that doesn't tell us anything, well, that isolates that, and then we can go on into the motor, see if the Android valve, if it's like an AFC valve, if its diaphragm's ruptured, putting air in it that way. We just have to narrow it down. It's like detective work. You just eliminate the possibilities.
So long story short, the way I understand this, it's very different from my cat, so this is kind of new to me. Your air compressor is right here. It's driven off the gear drive off the front of the engine, and this is what they call a PT pump. And over the years, these are very different. This is somewhat different from the 855 that came out of the Ford sitting over there. Now, what's throwing me is there's this ECM looking thing right here, like a computer, but I don't know if that's simply cruise control, which this truck does have, or I really don't know. So that's the thing. But the idea Chris is explaining is to get the fuel direct to the PT pump, deleting everything, including even here, it's got a fuel heater that uses engine coolant to heat the fuel. This we're going to delete, if it's the plan anyway, and we're going to go with an electric one like Orwell has. But for right now, we want to run fuel direct to the pump, direct to the engine, without anything else. If it's an airbound issue, that should solve the problem. If not, well, then I have to make a trip to Cummins, or there's a diesel shop up the road that knows about how to, you know, they can rebuild the pump, they can alter the pump, whichever it may be, so they can bench build them. So let's at least figure out what we got. If that'll solve our problems, then I'll know what to tell the guy later today. All right, now some of you may know this, I don't. So we're learning, that's how we learn. We just follow the hoses and the wiring, right? So this line comes from the tanks into the fuel heater. Comes out, heated. Again, this is part of what we'll be deleting, but for the time being, it's here. It's how it's working. And it goes in to the engine back here through an ECM plate, is what Chris is calling it. So what it's doing, it's cooling, it's using the fuel flow to keep this thing cool. Correct? Yeah. It comes out here, horseshoes down, comes back up here into your filter, and obviously from your filter into the housing, into your PT pump. Chris wants to delete that and run direct from here. I guess it's a somewhat common problem, that I guess it's somewhat common problem that ECM plate, that's where they start sucking air.
They'll crack, yeah.
All right. Now, a lot of you are like, all right, I already know that. Well, I didn't. I bet there's a lot that didn't. So if you knew, leave a comment. Leave a comment right now if you think you've seen this before or have an idea of where to look. Obviously, by the time we get done making the video, we'll have found what we found, and we'll get to the comments afterwards. But leave a comment what you think. I'm curious what you guys think. Let's check it out. How else am I going to learn if I'm not here doing it? Or watching and learning, right?
Yeah. Let's see if these will even come off. I need to hold that. Well, that's not going to be so easy. Get up here where I can hurt myself.
It went. I watched the hose bounce.
Get on there for a minute.
Oh, it's only been together since I was in high school.
Change these around. Need to straighten it. First, we'll just drop the return into a bucket, see if we get air. Think.
That's okay, we didn't need that.
We were just saying about setting something on a round thing and get mad when it falls off.
Yeah, that happened earlier. Off camera, while we were setting up to get started today, we were working on the chapel trailer. And our barn fan that we have, it's round, and for how many years I've always been known to put stuff on top of it while it's running, especially, and all the wrenches will slide right off, and then you get pissed. And you knew better to put it on there. Yeah. It's like using a tire for a tool bench.
But it still makes you mad.
Yep. Now, I failed to mention this, so that line you took off, that's the return from the fuel that the engine did not burn. That's the return to the tanks.
Yeah.
So we're just threading that on and then firing it up and seeing what comes out. Now, you got to understand the idea behind all of this is, yes, This is a fairly large project, is getting this truck up to running and, you know, being a good, safe, reliable truck. However, we do not have unlimited funds. So we do have to do it reasonably cheap, yet reliable. And this is just how we're gonna have to do it. Is that the best engine? No. Is that the best engine setup? No. Is this the best truck? No. Is there a perfect truck? No. Unless you got $300,000 and a fleet of mechanics to follow you around as the warranty problems persist. But this is what we got. You go to war with the army you have. So the game plan is real simple. Figure out what's going on, why it's going on, and how to make this engine make us money. This is not a show truck. This has to make FSC Trucking some dollars. All right, so now the return is going to go into the bucket rather than back to the tanks.
Hopefully that'll stay in there.
Cool. Now, do the starter wiring trick. Oh, damn, Dave, stupid solenoid.
Anti-theft system.
Yeah. Damn it, you got good at doing this. Where the hell did it? Oh, here it is.
Yeah, I know.
I forgot where it was. Someone's using red fuel. What were you expecting?
Bubbles.
So that's fuel flow that should be.
Yeah, that's just returned to the tank. So now I'll try to get that one off. It's gonna be tight with the ether start.
Let me take that off. I don't think we're ever gonna use it.
It broke anyways. Yeah, and hook hose to that. We're gonna need fuel in a bucket, which we might have enough over there.
Now I will mention the obvious. I bought this truck and I never put it on the road. This truck was being used from what the previous owner told me. I actually talked to him about trying to figure out what happened, what might have been caked up in that exhaust and so forth. And that begs the question too while Chris pulls that unit off there. The truck was being used, I thought, as a farm truck, like a yard spotter type deal. No, it wasn't hauling grain or anything like that. It was moving trailers at a cardboard place. So that's what it was doing. Obviously, they were putting red dyed diesel fuel, you know, non-tax diesel fuel in this truck because it wasn't being used on the road. Later on, we were cleaning up this pipe, getting the flex off, and when Chris was heating up the clamp to save this length of pipe, the other side was smoking, the exact same smoke that was coming out the stacks. And you can see, let me go get a flashlight, I'll show you. All right, now I got light on the subject. You can see the stuff that's caked up inside the pipe. See right there? That's pretty thick. Now that was close to the turbo. We're pretty sure that that engine smoking and blowing diesel and oil like it's been just caked that exhaust system full of it. And by the time I got to the back, it was cooling down and it didn't have enough velocity from idling, not going down the road. Didn't have enough to lift it out the stack and up, and just caked it real good on the inside of that pipe. I'm pretty sure that's what happened. It's possible that something was getting laid into the pipe from where the truck was sitting. It's possible, but that stuff being close to the turbo, that's a lot of wet, sticky, carbon, fuel, oil mix. Pretty sure that's what happened. And we don't want to have that happen again. This engine is kind of doing that to the exhaust. So we have to figure out why it's doing it. Now Orwell has a button for an ether injection, but there's no ether injection to it. The Ford had that on there too.
Well, not even hooked up. Cool.
Well, we're not going to use it anyway, so off with it. Everybody knows my thoughts on ether and diesels, especially when you got to pay for them. All right, what were you showing here to me off camera?
But this line threads into a check valve that goes into the cooling plate, and the check valve's trying to come out with the line, so I've got to hold the check valve and then crack the line loose.
Okay, and that's the supply line to the PT pump from that cooling plate.
Yeah.
All right.
Now see, I could take it off here and run it, but I would rather...
Yeah, if that plate's cracked, taking it off there won't help.
There.
Right. Makes sense.
But...
Or can you pull it here? Can you put a hose to that?
Different fitting
Oh.
that I don't have.
Okay.
But maybe I should take it off here and run it and see. Well, I'm already here. I'll try to get this loose.
Let me get you.
Yeah, I can't get on.
So what that tube is that Chris is taking off, think about it. The air compressor has to compress air to make air pressure for the brakes. But if you can get pre-compressed air that already came filtered through the turbo, pre-compressed, the compressor already has a leg up because it's already taking it from the intake, which is obviously pressurized by the turbo when you're running. If you're like gassing it, you know, making boost. So that's what that is, the intake for the air compressor. So when we start the engine, it can just pull air directly into here. It doesn't have to come from there. It just, under normal operation, it would be better if it did.
Got it?
Yep. There we go.
Holy cow.
There's no need for fuel lines to be that tight.
I was gonna have to call my mom, have her come get it off for me. That looks red too.
It did, didn't it? I bought that at Quick Trip. But the last little bit looked clear.
That might be the yellow bucket.
Well, either way, I got to get more anyway for next time we need service on anything. Now one question I asked Chris was this right here. It's like some kind of a fitting or something. I noticed there's one there, and I noticed there's one right there on the fuel inlet. Right there.
Well, you call that a what? A CompuCheck fitting?
Yeah.
And he, of course, has the gauge, so it's basically for testing the pressures.
If it's the same. This is gonna be tricky.
Well, you got bigger, fatter wire.
Directly from the fuel in the bucket, bypassing the ECM cooler plate, going directly into the PT pump.
Sounds like we made it worse.
Well, that's not the direction we want to go.
Well, we're narrowing it down. I don't trust that gauge isn't doing anything.
It came up to about 30 when you were revving it.
But it's not resting at 0. What's the holding pressure? I don't know. The problem is not from here back. We know that.
No, it's from the hook up forward.
It's in here.
And the only thing we all we have left is just the hose from there to there, which that's highly unlikely.
It's not unheard of, but again, you know, this housing can crack Usually you see it seeping. I don't see that.
But that'd be something that'd have to go out.
But we do have fuel up here. I don't know what's coming from there. We know that one's leaking. There's something else leaking back here. I think it needs to go out. Have that looked at.
Yeah.
Gone through. See what it costs to fix it. And then weigh the options. You know. Instead of just throwing a pump and injectors, let's get that checked.
Yeah.
And go from there.
Well, we got an idea where to look now.
Seems like a, exercise of futility, but not for nothing. You kind of have to go through step by step to eliminate what could be a very obvious problem. Think about it. The truck's a 91. All the hoses are original. It hasn't ran good in quite a many years, so we pretty much eliminated all the fuel lines from the PT pump back to the tank, except for that one little 1 foot line, which I doubt that'd be the case. It's possible, but to be honest, I don't think so. It's just the way the engine's running, the way things are working out, and the condition of it. It is problematic. Let's just figure it out. So I'll go to Cummins, I'll talk to the guy, and like I said, we'll just start with taking that pump off, sending it out, check it, and say, okay, what's it gonna take to fix that pump the way it should be, or go to the next step and replace the injectors and the PT pump. Let's go find out. What's up, everybody? It is the next day. Got some stuff to show you. So I went shopping earlier, just a little bit ago, just getting back. Got some aluminum strips in the back of the truck. I got a box from Cummins. A pair of injectors. Probably wondering, what are you doing with injectors? We'll get into that. Come on inside, I'll show you what we got going on. So what I got in the back of the truck are aluminum strips. Now Chris does have the ability with that welder he's got to weld aluminum, but we decided we were going to sandwich the cracked side rail of the chapel trailer with aluminum strips. This will go inside that notch, this will go below the notch, and of course the outside one will sandwich the two together and make that a lot better off. So that's that battle plan. So this will go sit over here on the inside. Alrighty, so inside we've got a lot of stuff going on. It's towards the end of the day, afternoon time. Chris was in here working all day, and I was running around editing video, taking care of other errands we had to do. Tomorrow, got to fire up Orwell and get out of here bright ass early in the morning, so it's going to be a rough day. So I'm not really sure how this video is going to play out, because I think it's just going to continue, and then that video of getting Orwell loaded would be a whole nother video, pretty sure. So this is what we got going so far. Update on the chapel trailer time. What we did is, you remember we took this plate out. It was all rusty and nasty. We took it out and we rebuilt it. Well, we finished it now. So now this piece is now painted blue, same as the step deck sitting outside, and it's ready to go. Remember, this is cracked and the holes are
ovaled out and too big. So there's a crack far back, is all the way out to here, I think, is the last crack. Yeah, last crack. So what we did was, these were bolted. I think a couple of them were nut and bolted and some were riveted. So I had Chris grind all these out, and the cross members that are still there held up by this beam, just in case. I just don't want to take too many cross members out from the floor and have the floor sag. So this way, cross members are held up by that beam to the floor. And now we could sandwich this piece between the cross members in that gap right there. You'll see where Chris painted, just to keep it all from corroding. That way this piece will fit up in here nice and snug. And then we'll just put the angle brackets back in, just drill the holes more closer to the center of the beam and replace the ones that aren't twisted. This one's got a little damage, but that's okay. We'll leave that. You'll see that one's not bad here. The next one, and then those two right there are pretty twisted, so those will be replaced. If you look right there, you see the wires hanging down. We replaced the wires and the plumbing that went under here, up through here. This is where you hooked up your glad hands and your power plug for all your lights for the actual semi-trailer portion of it. That's just this piece laying right here. So this will all get replaced. New glad hands, new plug. So that'll go back in with all new wiring and all new plumbing. That'll be all brand new. Once that's all done and up, the lines and the electrical is done, we'll lift up that with the forklift, put it up, bolt it in, sandwich those pieces, button it up, and be done. Now that's with the fifth wheel part of the job with this. Now, on to the next. Elaine. Today off camera, Chris obviously got the muffler mount off because we're not going to reuse any of that. The hoop that went up and over for the electrical plumbing, not going to use that. There's going to be a catwalk. There's going to be a headache rack here. So that's going to be all covered up. These air fairings will be removed. The quarter fenders, they're pulled off. We're going to be replacing them. And notice Chris already removed all the fifth wheel bolts. That's going to go up and out. The fifth wheel is going to be bolted back. If it isn't going to be bolted back, we're going to have to put a slider. But if this one functions fine, just free it up. It's obviously got dried up grease. We're just going to bolt it further back on the frame and then call it good once we know where we need to put it. Quarter fenders are here. One's chrome, one's black. We got to get nicer ones. So that's that portion of it. Catwalks over here. I don't know if we'll reuse it, maybe, maybe not. And of course, on the floor is the stack bracket and the support from, factory Freightliner. We are not going to use that. I might post that up for sale. That piece, that's just a piece of flat steel bent. It's already bent, like screwed up bent, not in good condition. So that's a scrap pile. The muffler bracket, probably sell it. So if anybody wants a muffler bracket factory for a Freightliner, if it matters to you that it's got to be factory and perfect, that's up for sale. FSCheckTrucking@gmail.com. So Chris is not the happiest of all. He doesn't like doing automotive as much, but it is what it is. We're starting to pull the motor out this Cadillac. It's got screwed up connecting rods. You might have seen that earlier. So once that engine's out, we're going to pull it. I'm going to replace the connecting rod, or rather, remove the connecting rods. The engine ran a long time with one cylinder dead, and that connecting rod had ovaled out. So I'm going to send out all 8 rods, get them remachined to be ovals, from ovals to circular like they're supposed to be, and put them back in. New rings, new gasket kit. That's kind of like the winter beater. This was going to be where Jen's Mercedes is, and then we found out that we had the ability to buy nicer stuff, so we just bought that, and the car's been sitting. But I did put a lot into this thing. This car does have brand new tires, all new brakes. It just sat in storage for quite a while, so now we're kind of like thinking to use that as a winter beater / shop vehicle. I just feel bad if Chris goes running out for parts. He either uses my truck or his truck. It just seems ridiculous to drive a big dually just to go get parts. But let me go ahead and show you the stuff that we got in the box here, because we went ahead and looked at a couple things for this truck, and I'm not finding the answers that I want. So in the box is some stuff we got. So I've got information on injectors, parts, numbers, and prices. And I have IPB, illustrated parts breakdown of the STC valve for this from Cummins, and along with a parts list. Some is available, some is not. We'll get into that in the future. But I went and got troubleshooting and repair manual for Cummins, and I went and got shop manual. Covers big cam 4, new big cam 4, 88 big cam 4, NT-855 series engines. So I'm told this covers that, the STC system in NTC-365. So now we have the books. Also, we got curious. We yanked some injectors out. Let me show you. This is an injector out of Elaine. This is the STC style injector that uses oil pressure to advance or normalize oil and fuel. It's both. It's kind of a confusing. I haven't learned it all yet. And we got curious and we yanked an injector out of the 855 that came out of Lazarus's engine. I was curious as to whether this engine can use this injector as opposed to this. And we measured it, and when you look close, you find out, as far as fitment in the head, they're identical. There is a slight difference, however. This has this washer, and this does not. I don't know if that'll matter, but I'm worried about the geometry. What I'm worried about is the geometry of the valves, because to be honest, both engines, there is a difference between the two engines, and it's not in the injector per se, but it's definitely the rocker box. Now Chris covered all this up with some rags so nothing falls in it. So here we have number 1 head, number 1 cylinder, number 2 cylinder, the bridges. Chris just put the rear bridge there, the forward bridge there. That way we keep it in track of which, where they go and all that whatnot. Here's your injector and your injector hold down. There's the injector that's missing. We took number 1. This little plastic rubbery piece, that's where oil pressure gets fed from the top through and back up into the injector for the injector to make its adjustment internally. But yeah, that's the rocker box piston. Here's the oil line that comes from the STC system to make that whole STC part work in the injector. But as far as the injector fitting in the hole, the 855 that came out of Lazarus will fit. There is a difference in the hold down system. I think even there with that washer makes a difference because you would simply use a different hold down. You take this out and the head is still threaded for the bolt to hold it down like the old style, 1 bolt, 2 bolt. You'll see when we show you Lazarus's engine with that missing. Now I had Chris replace the plumbing as the way it was. Now here's the weird thing. This does not belong with this engine. We found out from a local diesel shop here in Green Bay that when I gave them the CPL number, or they were able to find the CPL number, this thing being 1211, this engine, he found off the engine serial number, which is right there on that stamp there. This is not the right setup for this engine. So apparently somewhere in this truck's life, this pump went bad, so they just put that pump on it. God knows where the other one was. So they just swapped it out and it functions, but it doesn't function proper. So this pump is gonna have to be removed, replaced, or rebuilt. That's determining whether I can get rid of the STC system or if I have to be stuck with it. This is where I start getting aggravated because I'll be honest with you, it's not the people at Cummins at the local dealer here. They're actually good people with a heart of customer service. They try really hard, but Cummins corporate, they're tough to deal with. They really are because number 1, if you call for parts, you get a call center. And a call center might be in India. And you're trying to explain to somebody who has no idea what you're talking about, what you're looking for, and then they look for it and they ask you a bunch of questions, and it's really problematic. I just don't like how Cummins does it. I'll be honest with you. I'm seriously considering yanking that engine out and putting a cat in there because Cummins just, corporately, they suck. They don't work like Caterpillar do at all. So Caterpillar, love them. Cummins, Again, talking about the customer service at the corporate level. All right, so here's the engine for Lazarus sitting right here on the engine stand that me and Chris built. I will go ahead and show you inside. Now this engine did not have Jake brakes. Squeeze in there. This engine did not have Jake brakes, so it was a little easier to deal with. That might not be a good idea. This engine did not have Jake brakes, so it was a little easier to take apart, but we did take the rocker box off and determine that they are very different. So I can show you that here in a minute. So with your rocker box missing, same as the other stuff earlier, you've got your bridges for your valves. You know, it's just that way one rod pushes both valves at the same time. Your injector sits in the middle with a single horseshoe style. Get the light. So you hold down bolt, and bolt holds down the injector. That's the difference. There's no oil inlet to the injector from the top. You know, using, you know, there's no STC, step timing control. So there you go, your push tubes, or some people just call them push rods, either one. So yeah, obviously there's a bunch of bird's nests. But you see that shaft right there, right dead center of your screen? That right there, that geometry changes between one engine to the other. And it is important, and I'll try to show you why. All right, I'm not finding the rocker box from the 855 that's sitting over there, but this is the rocker box from Elaine. But I don't have to show it to you, I just explain it to you. The shaft height is different. See the shaft here? It's different from this one to the 855, which means I think this is higher. If your rocker arms aren't pushing down directly, here, let's just try to line up with this. If you're pushing down, that's one thing. But if you're already down and you push down further, so you're curling in, so you're, instead of pushing straight down, you're pushing it sideways and down. If it's too high, again, trying to line up like that. If you're pushing high, not only pushing down, but you're pushing that way. See, that's exaggerated. So now if you're pushing your valves, or your injector, I should say, you're also, instead of down, you're pushing sideways. So if you don't get the geometry with your rocker arms right, and your rocker arm shaft, you could really be doing some damage. And it might run for a little while, but it won't run right. Rather, it may even run right, but how long will it run? That's the thing. And with what I'm planning on doing with this truck, it's got to run good for a long time. It can't be just going down the road eating up valve guides or injectors and so on because of that. So I'm not really sure you can successfully delete the STC out of this thing. So yeah, so next step is getting that pump configured to the way it was supposed to be, because that's the wrong configuration for this engine. And again, that was before I bought it. But also, can we rebuild the STC valve in the back of the engine? That pump I know is rebuildable, and I do have the price for that. And I now have a price for a set of injectors for this, but it's a 30 to 45 day lead time. So I have to make a decision reasonably quick whether I'm going to go ahead and order a set of injectors. That's where we're at right now with this unit. So we got to figure that out. But that's basically been how today's been, figuring out what to do and how to do it. Yeah, there we go. All right, well, I'm going to go lock up, go home, figure out the rest of my day.